Hello and welcome to a new episode of Nile TV Newsroom Live. I'm Raham Morsi, and today we have a number of different segments. First, we take a look at the world of politics, then a closer look at what's happening in business and finance. Sometimes we have some interesting stories from the world of technology, in addition to the arts world. And finally, we end our show with our final segment, which is a closer look at the sports world. So stay tuned for more on this episode right after the break. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi addressed an extraordinary summit of BRICS groups via video conference on Tuesday. In his address to the summit, which was held to discuss the latest developments in the Middle East, President al-Sisi expressed confidence that Egypt would exert effort to enhance cooperation and joint coordination with the group based on the principles of solidarity, mutual respect, as well as the respect for international law. President al-Sisi said the BRICS summit took place at a critical time during which Palestinians were witnessing a continuous escalation in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, which claimed the lives of thousands of innocent Palestinians, two-thirds of whom were children and women. He added that the entire Gaza Strip had been exposed to collective punishment, a siege, starvation, and forced displacement. The head of state affirmed that such cruel humanitarian scenes revealed the inability of the international community and the stagnation of the human consciousness. President al-Sisi called on the international community to put pressure on Israel to comply with the implementation of the resolutions of international organizations as an occupation power. He further confirmed that Egypt has opposed and condemned the killing of civilians by all parties, as well as targeting civil facilities, especially hospitals. The president affirmed that the international community bears a humanitarian and political responsibility to save civilians in the Gaza Strip and to stop the inhumane practices that make life and living in Gaza near impossible, forcing people to leave their homes and lands. Also during the meeting, South Africa, which hosts the virtual summit of BRICS that included nations such as Russia, with President Vladimir Putin, to discuss the conflict in Gaza. As well, the BRICS includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and are a group of emerging major economies seeking to reshape the US Western-led global order. Tuesday's extraordinary joint meeting on the Middle East situation in Gaza was hosted by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the hope of drawing up a common response to the more than 6-week conflict. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli addressed a general session of the House of Representatives on measures the government had taken to prevent the forced displacement of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Madbouli expressed total rejection of moving Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to Egyptian lands, saying it is a threat to Egyptian sovereignty and integrity. The Prime Minister said that he followed with great interest parliamentary motions regarding state efforts to prevent attempts to forcibly displace Palestinians from their lands. In this respect, Madbouli reviewed Egyptian efforts and measures taken to prevent attempts at forced displacement from the Strip. Madbouli emphasized full Egyptian solidarity and support for the Palestinian people during the current plight. This is in continuation of the Egyptian historical role towards the Palestinian cause. The Prime Minister hailed Egyptian role towards the Palestinian cause, adding that the country had sacrificed and would continue to sacrifice for the Palestinian people. He indicated that these briefings reflect an accurate and clear understanding of the challenges that Egypt also faces. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry was among an Arab Islamic delegation which on Tuesday held talks in Russia with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov over developments in Gaza. During the meeting with Lavrov, the delegation expressed rejection for the forced displacement of Palestinians from their lands and urged the need for a ceasefire and for forcing the Israelis to implement international resolutions. For his part, Lavrov said the amount of aid offered for Gaza is still below the needs, urging the need to reactivate the peace process on the basis of a two-state solution. Russia is the second to stop of the delegation's tour of major countries' capitals to discuss means of diffusing the escalation in Gaza. The delegation had started the mission in China, where Shoukry said the Israeli policy of delaying aid into Gaza is systemic and aims to force the Palestinians to leave the enclave under heavy bombardment and a tight siege. Head of the Arab Parliament, Adil Al-Assoumi, said the parliament will file a lawsuit on behalf of the Arab people at the International Criminal Court against the Israelis for crimes in Palestine and specifically in Gaza. He said the parliament is always in support of Egypt's leadership's parliament and people in a drive to seize attempts to displace the Palestinians. He also expressed support for Jordan in this regard, also as a stance against the displacement of Palestinians to Jordan. Al-Assoumi was speaking at a press conference held to announce details of the international move to face crimes against the Palestinians in Gaza and Palestine as a whole. Life was grinding on across the Gaza Strip on Tuesday in the 7th week of the war between Israel and Hamas, with a new normal defined by destruction, displacement and daily hardships for looking for food and trying to stay dry. Here's the story.
Children poke at trouble with their feet after an airstrike and pick up household items from the debris. Families queue for sacks of flour distributed by UN workers. Volunteers cook lentil soup to warm up displaced people drenched by rain. In Khan Yunis, the town in southern Gaza, where hundreds of thousands of residents of the north have fled to escape intensive Israeli bombardment, neighbors said an overnight strike on an apartment had killed 7 people, mostly children. Israel claims its strikes are aimed at Hamas infrastructure based on intelligence. It blames Hamas for civilian casualties, all while carpet bombing the Gaza. The Israeli government added that the group it had vowed to destroy uses civilians as human shields. The war started when Hamas fighters entered southern settlements of Israel on October 7th, killing 1,200 Israelis and abducting 240, according to Israel, which has responded with a military assault that has killed some 13,000 Palestinians, according to health officials. In Jabalia, a refugee camp in the southern Gaza Strip, and in Rafah in the south, Tuesday morning brought tragically familiar scenes of adults and children wounded in bombardments being rushed into overcrowded hospitals. While in Rafah, an aid truck full of sacks of flour was being unloaded by UN workers in distinctive blue vests. People were carrying them away on bicycles, donkeys, carts, or on their backs. Life-saving for hundreds of thousands of Gazans, the food aid coming through the Rafah border crossing is nevertheless insufficient to feed everyone adequately. Back in Khan Yunis, a group of volunteers have banded together to cook large pots of lentil soup for displaced people in one of the 10 cities that have sprung up, with donors providing money or ingredients to make the project possible. Men, women and children lined up with empty bowls and plastic food containers waiting for their share of the fragrant soup simmering in 3 large metal pots as men stirred it with a long plank of wood. While the soup was enough to bring a measure of comfort, even children could not forget the desperate situation. With the fear of bombardment looming over their heads, people in Gaza also face a number of dire conditions such as dehydration, starvation, and the possible spread of disease, with such cramped conditions of the displaced in makeshift tents.
The United Nations warned on Tuesday that fuel shortages and worsening sanitation in the Gaza Strip are shaping up to be the perfect storm for tragedy through the spread of disease. The United Nations says 2/3 of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been made homeless. More than 2.4 million Palestinians are trapped in Gaza, and only several hundred war-wounded foreign nationals and dual passport holders had been allowed out. The story.
The United Nations warned on Tuesday that fuel shortages and worsening sanitation in the Gaza Strip are shaping up to be the perfect storm for tragedy through the spread of disease. UNICEF, the UN Children's Agency, said there was a serious threat of a mass disease outbreak in the besieged Palestinian territory. Speaking via video link from Cairo, elders said that the potential for wider loss of life in Gaza was being significantly exasperated because an estimated 800,000 children in the enclave are displaced from their homes. A World Health Organization spokesperson said on Tuesday that 3 hospitals in Israeli besieged Gaza had requested help with evacuating patients and said that planning was underway. WHO spokesperson Christian Lindmer said that the 3 hospitals were Al Shifa, from which a group of babies has already been rescued, Indonesian Hospital and El Ahli Hospital. He said such an event was the last resort. On Monday, the UN World Health Organization said 28 premature babies evacuated from Gaza's besieged hospital, Al Shifa, had been taken to safety in Egypt through the Rafah crossing. A UN protectorate in Gaza would not solve the conflict there, the body's Secretary General said Monday, calling instead for a transition period involving Arab nations and the United States and leading to a two-state solution. Antonio Guterres said it was important to be able to transform this tragedy into an opportunity which for him meant moving in determined and irreversible way to a two-state solution. He said this means after the current war in Gaza ends, a strengthened Palestinian Authority assuming responsibilities in Gaza. The United Nations says 2/3 of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been made homeless. More than 2.4 million Palestinians are trapped in Gaza and only several hundred war wounded. Foreign nationals and dual passport holders have been allowed out.
The chief of Hamas said on Tuesday that the Palestinian group was near a truce agreement with Israel, even as a deadly assault on Gaza continued and rockets were being fired. Hamas officials were close to reaching a truce agreement with Israel, and the group has delivered its response to the Qatari mediators, according to Ismail Haniyeh, leader of the group, and a statement that was written. The story.
A source briefed on the negotiations has said that the agreement was in its final stages and closer than it has ever been. The deal envisages the release of around 50 civilian hostages by Hamas and of female and minor-aged Palestinian detainees from Israeli custody, as well as a multi-day pause in fighting, according to the source. A Hamas official told Al Jazeera TV that negotiations were centered on how long the truce would last, arrangements for delivery of aid into Gaza, and details of the exchange of captives. Both sides would free women and children, and details would be announced by Qatar, which is mediating in the negotiations. Israel has generally avoided giving commentary on the status of the Qatar-led talks, but Israel's Channel 12 and Channel 13 TV stations both quoted unidentified officials as saying terms of a deal could be reached within hours, giving no details. Hamas took up 240 hostages during its October 7th operation into Israeli settlement that killed 1,200 people. Talk of the imminent hostage deal has swirled for days. Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Herzog, said on ABC's This Week on Sunday that he hoped for an agreement in the coming days, while Qatar's Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani, said that the remaining sticking points were very minor. U.S. President Joe Biden and other U.S. officials said a deal was near. Since October 7th, the Israeli army has bombarded and entered Gaza City for a ground invasion, killing at least 13,300 Palestinians, including at least 5,600 children, by Israeli bombardment that has turned much of Gaza, especially its northern half, into wasteland. Around two-thirds of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been made homeless, with thousands a day still trekking south on foot with belongings and children in their arms. The central and southern parts of the enclave, where Israel has told them to go, have also regularly come under attack. A day and a night of rain and cold winter weather worsened the dire conditions in Gaza for the displaced, many thousands of whom are sleeping rough or in makeshift tents. All hospitals there have ceased functioning normally due to a shortage of fuel to power generators and basic medical equipment to perform life-saving procedures. Though many are still housing patients and displaced Gazans, Israel says Hamas uses hospitals as shields for its fighters, which Hamas and the hospitals deny. The Israeli government has constantly bombarded a number of hospitals, killing hundreds in the process. The World Health Organization said it was working on plans to evacuate 3 hospitals in northern Gaza, Shifa, Al-Ahli, and the Indonesian hospital, lamenting this as a last resort.
Joining us over the phone to tell us more about the possible deal that could be made is Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Good evening, how are you?
Mr. Ambassador, how do you see the situation now? I mean, the idea of a tentative deal has been ongoing for maybe almost a week now. Like on Saturday and on Monday, each side, like the US, Israel, and so forth, have said that we're very close to making a deal, but no actual deal has come out of it. When could we possibly see some sort of pause within the fighting?
The situation, as you will know, is very complicated. It is highly complicated. Everybody is engaged and nobody is trying even to give one step forward to solve this problem. But in the last few hours and few days, we see that there is a sort of the light at the end of the tunnel. The American language is becoming a little bit tough because there are suffers from the people within the United States, within Europe, that they have seen, thanks to the international media, they have seen the massacre which is going on against civilians, against children, against women, and against all people. This is not a fighting at all. The honor of a fighter is not maintained at all. So we have two very quick requests. First, to stop the fighting for a few days. The second is to open the Rafah crossing in order to help the people who are staying without water, without gas, without any medicine. So we hope that this will encourage the Israelis to see that it's not a wisdom policy at all, which they are maintaining, that they cannot live with enemies surround them all over the borders, with enemies within the country itself. So even the United States and many European countries started to talk about the two-state solution.
Yeah, but sir, I mean, even as they're talking about a pause, and they've been ongoing when it comes to negotiations, there doesn't seem to be any let-up by the Israeli side. Even as they're saying the deal is very, very close, today we've seen several major bombings, even in the south, which are supposed to be the safe areas of Gaza, with scores dead. Do you believe that this is just some sort of stalling tactic by the Israeli side?
No, in the back scene, there is a reality. We do not discuss yet that the Prime Minister of Israel is requested by the judiciary system to go in jail. And this war is a sort of saving him out of the jail.
Yes.
So he is personally enjoying what he is doing. Mind you that he has small parties, highly righteous extremists. We have never seen in our life a minister of defense threatening us with a nuclear bomb, for the first time to confess that Israel has a nuclear bomb. And another minister is invading the Al-Aqsa Mosque, things we have never seen in our life anywhere in the world, even during the Nazi
Yes.
system in Germany.
But sir, I mean, which brings the next question. I mean, specifically, the U.S. has been a strong supporter of the Israelis and is adamantly against any form of ceasefire, despite the fact that many international partners around the world have said there are numerous violations of international law and have accused the Israelis of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Will there be a scenario where anyone will be held accountable for their actions?
Also, in the vaccine, we have to understand the real position of the United States and the European countries. Because at the beginning, Israel was established after the request of Napoleon when he visited this area, saying that we have to establish a Jewish state here to stop the relation between the Arab Maghreb and the Arab Mashriq.
Yes.
So Israel, as a matter of fact, is part of the national security of the NATO, of the states of Europe. But this, on the same level, on the same time, on the other hand, they cannot tolerate what is going on the human level. So you see something, and the next hour something against. They are hesitating between their main requests for Israel to play for them the soldier of the area, and on the other side, that Israel is maintaining unhuman policy in its war against the Palestinians. So we have to live with them. We have to negotiate. We have to be tough while we are negotiating. But the only way is to convince the Israelis that the peace process is much better for their future than this sort of hatred they are establishing. What is the future of Israel in 20 years to come, while they are enemies of all their neighbors all over, all the borders around them? They are enemies to half of their population, the Palestinians. Well, the two-state solution can help, but which border will be the Palestinian state in the coming future? Big question, and we still have a big challenge here to deal with and to solve in our negotiation with Israel.
Okay, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, the former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for joining us off the phone. We're going to take a short break and move on with the rest of the episode. Upon directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Egypt received on Monday 28 premature babies that were evacuated from Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza through the Rafah land border crossing and were transferred to Egyptian hospitals and received the needed treatment. Health sources said the babies have arrived at Al Arish Hospital and that there are 150 ambulances allocated to transfer other Palestinian injuries. The bloodiest ever Gaza war has seen Israeli troops raid, occupy and evacuate Al-Shifa Hospital. Meanwhile, humanitarian aid continues entering through the Rafah border crossing, heading to the Gaza Strip with a number of trucks carrying food, water and medication prepared to enter. This is in addition to the preparations around the clock to receive the injured and those with dual nationalities. A humanitarian assessment team visited Al-Shifa Hospital in northern Gaza and saw signs of shelling and gunfire in what was described as a death zone. The World Health Organization said on Sunday the WHO-led team, which included public health experts, logistics officers and security staff from various UN departments, was able to spend only an hour inside the hospital on Saturday due to security concerns, according to the WHO statement. The team said the situation was desperate, with the hospital basically not functioning as a medical facility due to the scarcity of clean water, fuel, medicine and other essentials. Signs of shelling and gunfire were evident. The team saw a mass grave at the entrance of the hospital and were told more than 80 people were buried there. The hallways and the hospital grounds were filled with medical and solid waste, and patients and health staff expressed fear for their health and safety. There were 25 health workers and 291 patients remaining at Al-Shifa Hospital, according to the WHO. The Israeli military did not immediately comment on the WHO statement or the visit. The remaining 2,500 internally displaced people who had sought refuge at the hospital grounds were gone after the Israeli Defense Forces issued evacuation orders on Saturday. Israeli forces seized Al-Shifa in their offensive across North Gaza last week, saying it concealed an underground Hamas command center. The military claims it found evidence of the Hamas base underground, which cannot be independently verified. Al-Shifa staff say Israel has proven no such thing. The WHO repeated its calls for an immediate ceasefire and sustained humanitarian assistance, saying options for medical care in the small coastal enclave were dwindling. The United States on Monday denounced the seizure of a cargo ship in the Red Sea by Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi movement. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller told a briefing that the Houthi seizure of a motor vessel Galaxy Leader in the Red Sea is a flagrant violation of international law. Miller said the Washington demands the immediate release of the ship and its crew and will consult with allies and UN partners as to the appropriate next steps. Moving to business and finance, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli on Sunday attended a roundtable discussion at the launch of the first follow-up report on the year achievement along the NWFE platform. During a speech at the roundtable, the Prime Minister asserted that the government is keen to encourage more investments and eliminate obstacles facing investors. Meanwhile, the Minister of International Cooperation, Rani Al-Mashot, addressed the gathering and reviewed ministry's efforts to secure climate-related easy development financing schemes and incentives to the private sector as part of the NWFE program. She said that they tried to benefit from international expertise and technical assistance to improve green projects in several domains, including sustainable transport and governance. The first NWFE report focuses on link between water, food, and energy projects. Joining us over the phone to tell us more about this forum was Dr. Ayman Abdulwahab, an international climate expert. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, can you tell us the significance of holding this conference?
Well, actually, the linkage between water, food, and energy is a brilliant idea because they are interrelated and they affect each other. And actually, to talk about climate change is not only about reducing the emissions of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, but now we are talking about an integrated plan that deals with all the negative impacts of climate change. And actually, it has been realized that we don't have to focus only on reduction of carbon dioxide, but we have to talk about adaptation, mitigation, and resilience during this hard time. And in Egypt, you know, where we depend on agriculture for food production, you know, we started to encourage small farmers to adapt with these changes by, you know, using different types of seeds that can resist droughts, that can resist new pests that you know, started to appear during the climate change and so on. So this is a great platform, and this is a great, you know, start to deal with climate change.
What about the idea of green projects? They spoke about the need to use international partners as well to develop several green projects. What does this actually entail?
Well, actually, the green products now, it's very important because, you know, green products, it affects the health, it affects the reputation of products, and many countries now you know, refuse to accept any products that are not developed in a green way, which means that we have to reduce the amount of fertilizers, reduce the amount of pest fighting chemicals, and have healthy foods that go hand in hand with the international specifications of green products. And actually, Egypt has gone so far in this direction.
Yes.
In many areas and in many fields of agriculture, including vegetable, fruits, and so on.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Ayman Abdul Wahab, an international climate expert, thank you so much for joining us over the phone. We're going to take a short break and move on with the rest of the episode. In money markets, Tokyo stocks were lower in early trade Tuesday as a higher yen weighed on the market, with investors awaiting the latest clues on the Federal Reserve's interest rate plans. The benchmark Nikkei 225 was down 0.5% in early trading, and the higher yen is generally bad for Japanese exporters as it deflates the repatriated profits while making Japanese goods less price competitive in foreign markets. The dollar fetched 148.25 yen in early trade in Asia and down 148.31 in New York and 149.15 in Tokyo. Global markets are becoming more confident that the U.S. Federal Reserve will not hike interest rates further. SoftBank Group was up 0.5% and Nippon Yusan was up 1.83% after dipping 0.74% in the previous session. And this operates in the Red Sea. The British government's year-to-date borrowing undershot forecasts despite a jump in October, according to official data Tuesday, boosting Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt on the eve of a key budget update. The Office for National Statistics said in a statement the public sector net borrowing reached $98.3 billion in the 7 months to October. That was less than the $115.2 billion forecast by fiscal watchdog for the Office for Budget Responsibility, but was $21.9 billion more than the same period a year earlier. The ONS also revealed that borrowing hit $14.9 billion in October, up $4.4 billion from a year earlier, on rising benefits for interest rates. The ONS added on Tuesday that public sector net debt totaled at $2.64 trillion at the end of October, or about 97.8% of Britain's annual gross domestic product. That was 2.3 percentage points higher than a year earlier and remains at levels last seen in the early 60s. Sunak was buoyed last week by news that UK inflation slowed sharply to 4.6% in October. The German government has frozen future spending pledges across almost all its budget for the rest of 2023 after a court ruling blew a massive hole in its finances. The Constitutional Court decided last week Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition had broken debt rules when it transferred 60 billion euros in loan authorizations earmarked for pandemic support to a climate fund. The move upended the government spending plan, and the Finance Ministry of Europe's biggest economy immediately suspended most projects under the fund from 2024. A Finance Ministry source said the so-called commitment authorizations for 2023 were also being suspended. In the world of sports, Egypt's national team defeated Sierra Leone 2-0 in Liberia in the second round of the African 2026 World Cup qualifiers on Sunday. Mahmoud Hassan Trezeguet scored Egypt's 2 goals, the first goal in the first half, then the second in the 68th minute of the second half. Egypt captain and prolific Liverpool scorer Mohamed Salah, Mohamed El-Nini and Omar Marmoush are among the stars in action. Egypt has thrashed the Djibouti 6-0 at Cairo Stadium earlier in the first round of the Africa 2026 World Cup qualifiers on Thursday. Egypt won the Africa Cup of Nations a record 7 times, but struggled in the World Cup qualifying, reaching the finals only 3 times compared with 8 appearances by Cameroon. This tally brings Egypt top of the group with 6 points, followed by Burkina Faso and Guinea-Bissau on 4 points each. The latest international break is proving costly for several European clubs, including Spanish powerhouses Barcelona and Real Madrid. Both teams will be depleted by the injury absences of important players affected by the FIFA virus while on duty with their national teams. Not long after Madrid confirmed injuries to Brazil forward Vinicius Jr. and France midfielder Eduardo Camavinga. Barcelona saw midfielder Gavi arrive from a stint with Spain in European Championship qualifying on crutches because of a serious injury that will likely see him miss the rest of the season. Premier League's champion Manchester City apparently avoided a scare. Erling Haaland's ankle injury sustained in a friendly between Norway and the Faroe Islands on Thursday doesn't seem to be too serious. England ended their European Championship qualifying campaign with a scrappy 1-1 draw in North Macedonia on Monday. But Captain Harry Kane said they have much to be proud of after topping their group and finishing 6 points ahead of Italy. England had sealed qualification for next year's finals in Germany with 2 games to spare, and Monday's draw saw them go through Group C unbeaten. Gareth Southgate's side fell behind hopes after debutant Rico Lewis was penalised for a foul inside the box, and Ian Aspardi scored on the follow-up after his penalty was saved. Dot got back on the level terms in the second half via an own goal from Johnny Atomsova. The fierce rivalry between Brazil and Argentina will hit fever pitch when Lionel Messi's world champions face the struggling hosts in a mouth-watering South American World Cup qualifying clash in Rio de Janeiro on Tuesday. 5-time World Cup winners Brazil will rely on their fans in a sold-out Maracana Stadium to give them an extra boost to recover after losing back-to-back games in the qualifying competition for the first time in their history. As they struggle with injuries to key players like Neymar and Vinicius Jr., caretaker manager Fernando Diniz must resort to a young team against Argentina, but one that he guarantees will stay true to Brazil's identity even against a great like Messi. Diniz said he expected a great but heated atmosphere at the Maracana, with fans looking forward to Brazil avenging the Copa America final defeat by Argentina 2 years ago. Winless in the last 3 games, Brazil have dropped to 5th in the South American standings on 7 points from 5 games after losing 2-1 to Colombia on Thursday. They are under heavy pressure as they prepare for longtime rivals Argentina, who top the standings on 12 points. World number 1 Novak Djokovic will seek to complete one of the best seasons of his incredible career by leading Serbia to the Davis Cup title for a second time in Malaga. Serbia is one of the 8 surviving nations from September's group phase and will face Britain on Thursday. The story.
Action begins on Tuesday when reigning champions Canada take on Finland, while on Wednesday the Czech Republic are up against Australia. Italy also faced the Netherlands on Thursday. Djokovic reached all 4 Grand Slam finals this year, winning 3 of them to move past Rafa Nadal to a record 24 major titles. On Sunday, he beat Italy's Yannick Sinner to win a record 7th ATP Finals title. But Djokovic is not finished yet, and the 36-year-old would like nothing more than leading Serbia to the men's team prize for the first time since 2010, when he was instrumental in a memorable victory against France in Belgrade. Serbia's task has been made a little easier with injuries ruling out Dan Evans and Andy Murray from Britain's lineup, although they still have world number 18 Cameron Norrie and youngster Jack Draper in the squad, as well as a strong doubles lineup including world number 3 Neil Skupski. Canada beat Australia in last year's final, and Felix Auger-Aliassime wants to prove that feat was no fluke. Canada are without the injured Denis Shapovalov and will have former Wimbledon runner-up Milos Raonic in their ranks against a Finnish squad which has already achieved the country's best result in the competition. Traditional Davis Cup powerhouse Australia have not won the Davis Cup for 20 years, but under captain Leighton Hewitt, they believe they can go one step further than last year. The Davis Cup will also be a chance for Sinner to shake off any lingering disappointment at losing to Djokovic in the ATP Finals on Sunday. World number 4 Sinner leads a strong-looking Italy side, who will be favorites to beat the Dutch.
This brings us to the end of this edition of Nile TV Newsroom. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more here on Nile TV.